Hey everyone, my name is Emily Rabo, and today with me is,
Samaya Siddiqui.
and we're both from the Industry Solutions team. We're both located in the Esri Canada Toronto office. So today the webinar is recorded. We'll send you an email within a couple of days with a link to the recording and a PDF copy of the presentation. So you'll have your own copy of the links and resources that we'll be sharing with you today. We'd also like to hear your thoughts on the webinar, so there will be a survey following the presentation. We do encourage you to fill it out upon exiting. If you have any questions about the content we're presenting, please use the Q&A panel. Be sure to choose Ask All Panelists, type your question, and just click the box and click Send. We'll also pause throughout the webinar to take questions, and we'll take questions again at the end, but feel free to type your questions at any time. All right, so today's agenda, we've got a lot to cover. We're first going to compare the classic story map templates to the new one-stop shop ArcGIS story maps. We'll discover how to navigate the new ArcGIS story map user interface, and then how to tell your story. We'll also share some great tips and tricks to make your story maps visually effective. We will start with a quick poll, and we're wondering what Esri story map template is your favorite? Samaya, do you have a favorite template?
Ooh, I actually do. I love the Cascade template. It's been one of my favorites. And what's really cool is the new ArcGIS story maps. It's kind of like a Cascade story map. What about you?
Definitely the Cascade story map. It's a good choice.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we are going to jump into it. So the ArcGIS story maps are your solution for creating beautiful information tools that combine your maps with narrative text, images, and multimedia. The process of building a story map is visual. So for that reason, we only have a few slides before we dive into our demo. So assembling a beautiful story just got easier. There's a few new features that we'll go over throughout this webinar. So first, there's a unified story builder. We've got one-click themes, express maps. There's a new autosave feature, a new publishing workflow, as well as a mobile-first design. So you might be wondering what will happen to those templates that you know and love. So there's a few important dates to keep in mind. The classic templates will be available for creating stories until mid-2020, and authors will be able to edit existing stories until 2024. After that time, stories created with those classic templates, they'll continue to be available for viewing and sharing, but the functionality and support will be limited. All right, so with that, we will jump right into our demos, and I'll pass it off to Samaya.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, so here I am in my ever so beloved ArcGIS Online account. I'm logged in using my identity. And to access the My Stories page, I simply just have to go to the app selector, and I can go to the My Stories page from there. So this is the new look of the new My Stories page, and you'll see that any story maps that you built using this story map builder will be here. But if you would like to access your classic story maps, they can still be found at the original version of My Stories, which is right over here. So I'm going to click that, and we'll head over there. So here, once this loads, you'll see my old story maps that I've created are stored here. And these are some of the old or classic story map templates that you are familiar with. So something cool about the new story maps is it kind of integrates the map journal, the cascade, the map series, and the basic story map templates in kind of like a one-stop shop. So that's really cool. So let's go ahead and create a new story. So first I'm going to go through this story builder interface. So from the top bar, you've got the story maps home button. Here you have your story maps title, which will get updated when you fill this out. Next, you have this draft icon, and as we work on this story map, notice how this icon changes to notify the author of unpublished changes. Next, we have some autosave information, and I'll bring your attention back to when that's changing. We have this design button right over here, and from here, quick changes to the overall theme of the story map can be made. For now, we're gonna keep going and keep this summit theme, but we'll revisit this later on. Next, we've got this preview option to just view your story map before it goes live. And then you have the option to publish your story map. So when you are ready to publish it, you can set the visibility of your story map here. So you can have it to everyone, or you can have it just to your organization. There's also a more option, so you can add your story map to your favorites. And as you scroll through, you'll see that this title card is where you start off with. It's the first element. And as you scroll down, you're prompted to start your story. And this little plus sign will follow you and open up a content block. And throughout the story, you can add some media or text to build your story up. So since I am working with Emily on this story map, I'm going to start by publishing this draft. So I'm going to share it with my organization. So once that is shared, you'll notice that this draft icon has switched into a published icon. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a title. And in this case, it's the case for zero waste. And here you can see that the icon has changed to unpublished changes. Let me show you another example of changing some text here. So now pay attention to the saved, the autosave right here. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to Esri Canada. And notice it'll say saving and saved. So now all this information is saved, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's published. So I'm going to pass it back to Emily, who is going to continue working on this story map.
Awesome. In recent months, there's been a significant buzz about banning single-use plastics in Canada, and that got me thinking about my consumption of plastic and my buying habits. I already had been refusing plastic bags every time I went to the grocery store, and I'm always walking around with a reusable coffee mug. But I knew that there's the largest producers of plastic waste is packaging, and that on top of that, in Canada, we don't do a great job of recycling. So I'm going to find that story map that Samaya shared with me. So I'll head over from my stories page to my organization.
Oh, and let me just point out, Emily is able to edit my story map because she is an administrator.
Exactly. So I've opened that story map that Samaya just started, and I have that edit story option. It's purple. There's a purple dot because there are unpublished changes. So I'm going to select edit story, and look at that. I can keep editing. So I stumbled upon a few articles about zero waste grocery stores and soap refill depots that are trying to make a real difference. So I thought I may as well tell our story of implementing zero waste habits while living in the city and to use the new ArcGIS story map to do so. So let's get started. How you can do your part, one reusable bag at a time. So the title card is where you'll want to grab the reader's attention. And for that reason, we're using a video of different packaging-free buying habits that we use. So reusable bags, some tarring or tearing, and using bulk foods. We'll let that video load, and then we'll keep editing that story. I'll start off by selecting an image in the block palette. And this component of the story builder will follow you throughout the way. I'll go ahead and add an image. And so images can be added in the body of a story, and keep in mind that the story builder supports image file size of up to 20 megabytes, and they support a variety of image types. Now, something I like to include in my process of creating story maps is keeping a color palette in mind. So I really like this image, and when I create accompanying media, I'd like to use some similar colors. So Samaya, do you think I have time to show a quick demo about how I generate color palettes?
Yeah, I think you definitely do. And I think this is really cool and something that everyone can use.
So I'll use this color palette generator. It's free and super easy to use. And once I've got that color palette generated, I will just generate a palette, and I'll keep those hex codes handy, and we'll come in, we'll use them later on when we're creating dashboards and editing and customizing the layout of our story map. All right, so let's get back to this story map. And the story builder lets you craft your story one content block at a time. So we're going to go ahead and add some narrative text, and that's really the foundation of your story. There's several types of content blocks for text that can be added. You've got the paragraphs, heading and subheadings, bulleted lists, numbered lists, and quotes, which are super important when you're telling a story. So we'll get started with our first title, Our World Wrapped in Plastic. Next up, I am going to add a quote. And one thing I forgot to do is add a little bit of a paragraph that gives important information. So when you use this block palette, you can insert new content at the top of your story, at the bottom of your story, and in between different elements. So I'll go ahead and add that new paragraph. All right, so Samaya, what do you think of this image that I just used?
Ooh, I think it looks pretty, but I think we can make it a little bit better. Okay, so here I'm back on that same story map, and what you may notice is this image is in a small size, but if I wanted to make it bigger, you see that those options are grayed out. So if I need that image to be a medium size, the image must be at least 1200 pixels wide. And if I need it to be large, it needs to be at least 2000 pixels wide. So first what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this image. And I'll go in and I'll add in just a larger size of that same image. And you'll be able to see that these options are now available. So I can make it medium, or I can make it really large. So I think we can better use this real estate by combining this image with some stats about global plastic use. And this is kind of another side tip, but I think I'm going to go in and show this little demo. So what I actually like using is an image editing website. So here what we have is that color palette that we generated before from the website that Emily had showed you. And you can notice that I've got those hex codes written down and ready to go. So this is the photo editor that I like to use. It's called befunky.com. And a lot of the basic functionalities which are available are great to use. If you want more functionalities, you can pay for it. But honestly, for this case, I think we're good. So here I'm just going to drag the image in, and I'm going to add some text. So something I want to share with everyone is a whopping 91% of plastic is not recycled. How crazy is that?
It always blows my mind.
Right? We put in all this effort to putting things in the recycling bin, and truth be told, most of it doesn't get recycled. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, center that text. I'll make it a little bit bigger. That looks good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that color palette to customize this a little bit more. So I'm going to go in and use this dark blue over here for my text size. Then I'll go in to my text outline, and I'm going to use this blue on the bottom right over here. Okay, looks pretty, but I think we can do one more thing. Let's add a highlight. So I'm going to use this light gray in the middle and just enter that hex code. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. What do you think, Emily?
That looks fantastic.
Awesome. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to save it to my computer. And I'll save it as a story map fact. So once that's saved, I can switch over back to my story map. I'll take this image out, and I'll go ahead and add that card we just made. Okay, let's make it big because I think it's a pretty big fact. And something cool is you can also access alternative text from the properties. So in this alternative text pretty much just shows the readers if the image can't be loaded. So I'm just going to repeat that fact in here. And we'll go from there. Okay, so next I'm going to add some text. So as we keep moving forward with how plastic is impacting the environment, scientists have come across corals who eat plastic and rocks made up of plastic washing up on beaches. So when you add a block of text, there's a convenient text editor which allows you to bold, italicize, add a link, or change the size of your text. So here I've just bolded these words, and I actually have an article telling me how rocks made of plastic are washing up on shore. So I'm just going to go to that article, grab that link, and I'll be able to link it to these words. Perfect. So I'm kind of curious to know, and I'm curious if you guys know, which countries are the main culprits in exporting their plastic waste. So here, I'm going to add a subheading, and I want to know who the top plastic exporters are in 2018. And just to let you know that if you do make a spelling error, the red squiggly line will appear and help you out there. Okay, so do we have any guesses on who the #1 top plastic exporter was in 2018?
It's a hard guess, but my money's on probably the United States.
Well, you better collect that cash, because United States is #1. So how I'm actually going to list that is just adding a numbered list element. So followed by United States, all I just have to do is press enter, and then #2 will show up, which is Japan, followed by Germany, and then the United Kingdom. So a bit interesting and honestly not completely expected. Okay, so now let's see who the top plastic importers are. So again, I'll add that number list. And we've got Malaysia, followed by Thailand, Vietnam, and Hong Kong. Emily, why isn't China on this list?
Well, China enforced the national sword policy not too long ago, so they've banned foreign recyclables to be imported, and that's leaving the global north scrambling to figure out where they're going to or what they're going to do with all the plastic waste that they're creating.
Yeah, and it looks like all of the plastic waste is pretty much just going to Asia. So Canada's not on this not on this top list, but it's not that far down. So I have this graphic online that I feel like would really help emphasize this point and get it through. So I'm going to access the graphic. And so this is the share of cumulative plastic exports by the top 10 exporters. So I can just go ahead, click that link. And now using the embed element, I'll be able to add that text. So automatically, when you first put this graphic in, you'll see that it can either show up as a content card. So if you maybe want to save space or feel like the graphic isn't totally necessary to be completely displayed, you can use this option. Or you can display the actual content itself. There's also an option to open the website in a new tab. Okay, so just like my image earlier, I can also adjust the size to fit the look of my story map. And I think the medium does well. Hey, Emily, I think it would make sense if we continued and talked a little bit more about what Canada's situation is with plastic waste.
For sure. So let's take a look at Canada's track record in terms of recycling. So we'll go down to where we left off. To break up the content, I'm going to add an element from the block palette called the separator. And then we'll go ahead and add the next title. So I've got to select the right heading. And with the story map, we have some fun titles. So one of our favorite Canadians, David Suzuki, has been very frank about just how much waste Canadians produce. So I'm going to go ahead and add his quote. So I added it in as just a paragraph. Often when you start typing, it's the default, but I can quickly just highlight the text and change it into a quote. Now, many Canadian communities have implemented some kind of recycling program. The first one was introduced in Ontario just about 30 years ago. And the reality is that the recycling system isn't working as well as we think. So that's an issue when we send plastic to landfill because it can take over 1,000 years for that plastic to decompose. I'm going to go ahead and add another image. And this time, I'm going to use the float option. And this offsets the image to the side and allows text wrapping around it. One last thing that I want to make sure everyone knows is adding captions. So that can easily be done. You have a default space. If you don't fill it out, it'll be blank. But I'll go ahead and add a quick little caption. Now, making maps for a story doesn't need to be a long, complicated process. So the Express Map is a lightweight mapping tool which in my case will allow me to make a quick map of the top 3 landfills per capacity in Ontario to show where a lot of Toronto's waste is ending up. I'll start off by giving a new title. So the reason why we wanted to know where Toronto's garbage is or recycling is ending up is because Samaya and I did a bit of exploring the city, as we'll see later on, to find out about zero waste businesses. Okay, so we'll go ahead and add our map. I don't have the information I need to display, so I'll just create one without even having to leave the story builder. So with an express map, we'll get that started. You can add some points, some lines, and polygons quickly to a base map. We'll let that load. So make sure to experiment with the different drawing tools that are available and find out which one works for you. So to add some elements, you just have to select which one you want. You can quickly click, draw, double click to finish that element. Maybe I want to add a line. Again, you just click and double click to end. I can quickly select multiple elements and then discard them if they're of no use to me. So I'll start by adding some important information to my map, and I want to locate the 3 largest landfills in Ontario, as I mentioned. So I'm going to add the imagery base map, and I can quickly do that and change the look of my map. I'll search the location of the landfills that I'm interested in. So we'll start by the Ridge landfill in Kent. I'll search that location. And keep in mind that credits will not be used if you're searching locations like I am right now. So with that point added, I'm going to add a numbered point. I don't want to add that default symbol, so I'm just going to X that out. And then from here, I can populate the content. So I'm going to go ahead and give it its name, Ridge Landfill in Kent. And then I'm going to add those 2 other points. So express maps are specific to the stories that they are created in. They are not added as separate items in ArcGIS online. They cannot be shared between stories, and they can't be exported or edited outside of the story builder. So we'll go ahead and keep adding our points. Forgot what this one is called, Twin Creeks in Lambton. I could add some additional text and images, and so every time that a reader interacts with the map, selects a point, that kind of additional information would be displayed. So this is my final point. There we go. And this is called Mohawk Street. All right, so one thing I wanted to show was the flow of garbage out of Toronto. Toronto is located right over here. And so I'm going to use some arrows because they're appropriate to show the flow of garbage out of Toronto. So select and double click. And once I add that arrow, and once it's been drawn, I can just select the center of that line and bend the line by dragging its midpoint, just like that. Then I can add a small annotation. Let's see. And once that's done, I can just set its space the way that it's displayed, and I can drag the handle to draw the leader line and just snap it to any of the already drawn features. So Because of the way that the rest of my map is being displayed, I kind of prefer the gray base map, so I'm going to go ahead and make that quick change and place my map. I can always return back to that map designer to make updates and revisions by clicking that edit button. And like all the other kinds of media in the story map, I can change this size. So I'm going to go ahead and set it to a medium size. All right. So we're going to pause here for a few questions. We have time for one question. And so the question is, can I reuse my Express map? So at the moment, Express maps can only be used in a single story. It just lives within the story map that you created it in. The data within that map cannot be exported and turned into a shapefile. For the time being, it really just lives in that single story map. All right, so with all that talk about Canada's recycling system, Samaya, do you know what we can do to change?
Well, Emily, if we need to change in a haste,
Cue zero waste.
That's right. So I'm just going to share my screen. And we're going to cue zero waste. So zero waste is pretty much the philosophy of how we need to adopt a lifestyle where we minimize the use of plastics in our daily lives. It's a movement about conserving all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery. Now, something really cool that I have is I've got this image that I feel like would fit perfectly in here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to insert the zero waste hierarchy. So I just want to go through this hierarchy really quickly because I feel like it's really important. So first, what you should be doing is just refusing to use plastic. Yes, it might seem difficult at first because it is such a convenient to us, but it is possible. I do not drink my bubble tea with plastic straws anymore. I have a metal one that I carry around with me. Next, what you want to do is you want to reduce the amount of plastic that is coming into your household. The plastic that you already have, it's really good if you start reusing that plastic. If you can't, then recycle it. But lastly, what we don't want plastic to happen is we don't want for it to rot. So I'm going to add a little bit of more text. And I just want to bring up some nonprofit organizations like Zero Waste Canada and how they're doing this amazing job of connecting communities across the country and inspiring change. Hey, Emily, can you tell the folks listening what you came across while you were on their website?
Of course. So let me just share my screen. Zero Waste Canada has a lot of great resources, and that's really one of their biggest assets. I was poking around their website, and I found that they had a zero waste shopping directory, and then from there, I was intrigued, and I found a spreadsheet of theirs, which lists all the stores that implement zero waste or low waste within their business models. I noticed that they had their addresses, and that was enough for me to create a map. So I went ahead and geocoded the spreadsheet, and I am now able to visualize where all the stores are located in Canada. So I'll go ahead, we'll take a look at that map that I created in ArcGIS Online. I will go ahead and add that other heading, and we'll go ahead and add a map. So earlier when we added that Express map, we went to we selected the map element. I'll do that same step again. I have that map that I created in ArcGIS Online. I also have access to all the other maps within my organization that have been shared with me. So I'll head back over there, and select that map. So this map is really cool. We'll let it load. We've got zero waste grocery stores across the country. We'll place that map. Now, if you select the stores, you will get additional information in terms of how the pop-ups have already been configured, but Samaya had a way better idea. She's always got really great ideas, so she went ahead and created an operations dashboard. And this provides even more information about the stores across Canada. And again, that color palette has come in handy. We used it to design this dashboard. So I'll get that link, I'll copy that. And I'm going to get rid of this map for now, and we're going to use that embed element once again. We'll paste it and see how that turns out. Okay. How does that look, Samaya?
That looks pretty good. So when I actually had designed this, I had made it so it would be dynamic. Is there a way it can be dynamic and interactive in a story map?
You're right. So as you can see right now, I noticed that too. You can't really interact with it. It sort of just acts as a static image. So I'm going to hover over this upper right corner, and there's this button here, Interact with Website. Turn it on, lock interaction, I turn it off. So I want people to be able to interact with this dashboard because it's super cool. So as you can see, I can zoom in to my map. And I'm kind of curious. I want to know how many stores in Toronto sell chocolate in bulk. How about you?
I'm curious about that too.
So it looks as though we've got 5 stores in Toronto that sell chocolate in bulk. That's very important information for us.
Very important.
So I want to tell the story of how Samaya and I went to meet some low-waste business owners in Toronto. This almost feels like a little story within a story, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to use a sidecar to do this. So once again, this is a new section. And this is all about how we went exploring Toronto's zero-waste businesses. Now, the ArcGIS Story Map Sidecar content block, you can find it down here, combines a stationary media panel with maps and images and a scrolling narrative panel of text. So it's very reminiscent of that map series template. It allows you to create an immersive experience with your story. So I'm going to start by giving a few details of this first store that we visited. Samaya, do you want to give us a few details?
Sure. So the first store we went to was Eco and Amore, and it's owned by Sarah and Laura, who opened up the store in September of 2018, so still pretty recent. And what it does is it provides refillable options to eco-conscious beauty lovers in Toronto. And what they did was they combined their great connections in Toronto's green beauty industry and created this store. So consumers and beauty brands alike are showing a growing interest in adopting zero waste habits. So I see Emily is about to insert an image right now. And what that's actually showing is their own in-house brand called Lines of Elon. And this image is showing a product for natural hair care, but honestly, they have full body, anything beauty products ready to go.
So one element that I kind of want to add is a map. I want readers to know where this store is located. One thing that the sidecar can include is it can easily fit a map within the narrative panel. So I'm going to use that same map that we used within the dashboard. Go ahead and select it. And in ArcGIS Online, I configured some bookmarks. So I'll go ahead and select that bookmark. I'll easily zoom to and place that map. And it fits really nicely within that narrative panel. All right. So when building a sidecar, you can add multiple slides. And each slide has its own media panel. So as you can see, we've added all the media we need for the Eco and Amour slide. We're going to go ahead and add a second slide. So this slide panel is displayed across the bottom of the screen, and you can use this to add and remove slides, navigate and reorder slides. That's done super easily. I can also set the different kinds of transition, so a slow fade or a fade. So we'll go ahead and give some details about the next zero waste store, and this one is Toronto's first zero waste grocery store. It's called Unboxed Market.
Yeah, so both of us went inside Unboxed Market, and honestly, I was blown away by the amount of variety they had and what they offered. There was a cheese station, there was a meat station, there was a milk dispenser, and all of it just made me realize, wow, that it's actually possible, even though before I felt like, no way, I can't live without plastic. So the co-owners of Unboxed Market are Michelle and Louise, and they both grew up in rural areas and were raised to recognize and appreciate their food and where it came from. And so they saw a lack of stores in Ontario, and you may have noticed that in our web map. There were a lot of stores in the BC area and in Quebec, but not really in Ontario, and they recognized a growing need in Toronto. So in September 2018, they signed a lease, and in February 2019, they opened up their storefront. So Emily, is there anything else cool we can add to this?
Oh, for sure. So Samaya mentioned how passionate Michelle and Louise are about their store, so I really want to give them a voice within this story. I can easily embed social media content, like tweets, Facebook, or Instagram posts. So I'll just copy this link and embed it. I really want everyone to see all these fresh fruits that they sell at their store. So again, I'll just select that embed element, paste the URL. And depending on the look that I'm going for, I can have just a content card, keep it really simple and sleek, or I can post that entire photo. So the embed content caption will display the Instagram post caption. So keep that in mind. If it's a really lengthy caption, it'll take up quite a good chunk of space. So as the reader scrolls through this sidecar in a published story map, the media panel changes to match the narrative content on each slide, and you can adjust the rate of transition. We can see that between Eco and Amour slide, and then it transitions over to the Unboxed Market slide. Okay, so the final store is called Saponetti. Samaya, do you want to give us a few details about this store?
Yep. So we had the pleasure of meeting co-owners Nikki and Christian, who are this amazing, passionate couple, and they started this project as a refill delivery service back in 2016. And their goal was to bring alternatives to consumers. And what they do is they refill household products like dish soap, laundry soap, hand soap, some personal care products. And that takes away the burden of having to add all this plastic to your green bin, to your blue bin, because it does add up. And the goal of the store was always to make it easy and convenient for consumers to skip buying items. So, Emily, do you have something else to show us?
I do. This is probably my favorite element to add of this story map. So one thing that Samaya purchased is some toothpaste in a refillable jar. So this is a video that I then turned into a GIF of Christian filling up that refillable bottle of toothpaste. So Samaya is now sending less toothpaste tubes to the landfill. Good for you, Samaya.
Thank you. I also have a pet peeve, and it has to do with toothpaste tubes. So I'm very happy with this.
So as I mentioned earlier on, these Story Map Builder, there's support for a lot of different kinds of media content, or image content particularly. So JPEGs, PNGs, and GIFs are included in that list. So one little element, you can switch the panel placement if that's works better for your narrative. We'll switch it back because I prefer it that way. And sidecars have been designed to work well on tablets and phones. So on smaller screens, sidecar content may be shown in a stacked layout rather than side by side as you see it right now. And the media panel in the top portion of the screen with the narrative panel at the bottom. So before we move on, I'm going to publish this story map as it is right now. So Samaya can show you one of the portions of the new publishing workflow that is part of this new ArcGIS story maps, and it's just how you can discard any unpublished changes.
Okay, so here I'm back on my stories page, and if I refresh it, you'll see that my story map is published. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into editing mode. I'll scroll all the way at the bottom. And okay, so notice what's on top. You've got that published icon and it says saved. So I'm going to go ahead and just enter some text. You'll notice that the icon changed to unpublished changes and it's been saved. So here in this menu, I actually have the option of discarding any unpublished changes. So if I go ahead and do that, that text that I just added in the bottom before or after Emily had published it should be gone. And there it is. It's not there anymore. Okay, so something that we wanted to show you, but I don't think we have time for, is when we visited all these stores, we actually, the only thing we didn't do was buy stuff for them, but we actually did some interviews with these 3 business owners, and you could just see the passion that all of these people expressed. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've got this Vimeo. I'm going to use that handy dandy embed element, and I'm just going to save that. So here I've got my video, and just like any image, I can make it bigger. I'll keep it small. And don't worry, we do want you guys to watch this video because we do want these guys to be heard. So a link to this video will be sent with the email after this webinar is over. Okay, so meeting these individuals and getting a feel for their passion really inspired us. So here I'm going to add a subheading saying, so what can you do? So we wanted to know how we could have a positive impact as a business and also as individuals. So while I continue adding some images and text, hey, Emily, can you talk a bit about what Esri as a company does?
For sure. So one of the elements that, or one of the businesses that Esri Canada has a partnership with, so we buy our coffee pods from Mars, and they have a partnership with a company called TerraCycle. And TerraCycle offers a range of free programs that are funded by conscientious companies like Mars. So we keep all of our coffee pods, we send it back to TerraCycle, and then they dispose of it in the most appropriate way.
Okay, so let me show you another element that you can add, and that is the button element. So what you can actually do is customize the text on your button over here. So I'm just going to write, click here for more info. And here I've got the TerraCycle website open. So I'm going to go ahead and just add that in.
So when I was playing around with this element, I found that there is a character limit on the size of the button. So it's about 33 characters. you won't be able to add anything more than that. So keep it brief, keep it concise.
Awesome. Okay, Emily, are there any other businesses that Esri is working with?
Yeah, so there's one called CSR Eco Solutions. Now, Esri Canada is currently undergoing a few renovations. So we've got a lot of furniture that we're trying to dispose of, and we are disposing of it in a responsible way. We've partnered with Eco Solutions, and they manage the meaningful redistribution of those kinds of assets. And they do that on behalf of a variety of Fortune 500 companies, and Esri Canada is taking part in that.
Awesome. So I've got a link to the CSR Eco Solutions site too. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that to our button. Okay, so what can we do as individuals?
Good question. So one thing that I found, again, perusing that Zero Waste Canada site, there are so many great resources. They have created some kind of educational guides, one of them being a zero waste starter kit. So getting to know some reusable elements that would be great for everyday use. So Zero Waste Canada created a PDF, and at first I thought, hey, we may as well just create another button and link to that PDF. But again, using that embed code, you can just add the PDF within the story map. Readers can then scroll through that PDF without leaving the story map. So this is also super handy if you want to maybe embed another news article, or if you want to embed maybe a survey 123. So using the embed code, it's super, there's lots of variety.
Okay, I think we're just waiting on it to load. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste that link. There it is. So awesome. We have the Zero Waste Starter Kit right in our story map. So this pretty much brings us to the end of our story map. And something that we wanted to end this off with was saying a special thanks to all those people that helped us out. So that includes, and I'm going to be adding this bulleted list. Christian and Nikki at Saponetti.
Sarah and Laura at Eco and Amour.
Michelle at Unboxed Market.
And then there's also Adam at Karma Co-op.
Okay, so we're going to flip back to the PowerPoint. But before we do that, I'm going to go back up to my story map. And remember that design option that we told you about? Let's visit it. So here's where you can change the theme of your story map. So for example, right now it's in Summit. I'm going to switch over to Obsidian. And you'll see how that changes. And it doesn't only change the look and feel, but also the font pairings are also changed. So let's go back to Summit, and something I like to do is change the accent color to something that's on my color palette. So I'm just going to change it to that dark blue. And if we scroll down, you'll see that the lines by our quotes change to that color. Any separators will change to that color. And also your arrows in your Express map. So lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to publish this baby because it's ready to go. So now we're just going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, I want to let you know what's next really quickly, just to let everybody know that this is brand new and it pretty much just came out of beta testing, but there's a lot of new functionality available, but just know that more will come up. So Something that's coming up next is adding places by uploading geotagged photos, allowing your story map to be printed, and also story maps will be available in ArcGIS Enterprise. So if you do have any feedback, since this is very new, you can actually access the feedback option through this little question mark. Something else that we wanted to bring up is if you make any story maps, honestly, even the classic template, and you think it's awesome, please send it to us because we would love to add it to Esri Canada's App Hub. So you can email either myself or Emily, and we will do that for you. Here's some resources that are really going to be helpful if you're going to be exploring the new story maps. And also here are some upcoming webinars and events and some related training courses. Also, the Esri Canada user conferences are quickly approaching, so if you haven't registered already, please do, because you'll probably see one of us there. And we want to see you too. Okay, so thank you very much. The recording is going to be available online, and we are going to be sending you all these resources by email. So now we're going to stop recording, and we are going to be taking some questions.